men, what is different than a fisher of men and a master fisher of men is master fishers of men teach others to be fishers of men. If you're not on Anna's daily text, what do you call that thing? Text. What's that? It's just called a text? It's not like a fancy name like Twitter or something like that? All right, well, you might want to add something to that. If you're not on her daily thread of texting, please ask her to be put on her daily thing. Every day she sends a small little, like, 20, 30-second clip of how God is using her to make Jesus known throughout the week. And I want to tell you thank you because it's really, it excites me and it's challenged me daily to just look at myself. I'm supposed to be not only a fisherman, but a master fisher of men. And sometimes I am too selfish and too focused in my own life. And I thank you for encouraging me to break out of my box. So break us all out of our box. So Father God, I want to thank you for Anna. I thank you that of all the places in the world that you could have brought her, you decided to plant her family here in America and her specifically here in this church. And God, to watch over these past few years as you've taken her and through sometimes very difficult times, times of brokenness, times of pain, you've rescued her. You showed her your great love and your great mercy. And as you've touched her so deeply, you've then released her and sent her out into the world to go and bring that forgiveness, that grace, that mercy, that love, that comfort to those that need it the most. God, I pray that as she opens up her mouth to speak now, there's a word from your heart that you placed in her heart. I pray, God, we would hear beyond the words that come out of her mouth, we would hear your heartbeat, God. And I pray that when we leave here in just a few short minutes, we would have your eyes and your heart to see the people that you place around us. Move us today, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Bob. So I am really excited that I get to speak today because, like Pastor Bob was saying, God, I never knew how to fish for men until I moved to this area, and I haven't started to really enter into it until like these past few weeks. But God has really been teaching me and showing me and getting me excited and passionate, and so I'm thankful that I get to talk about it today. But just a little intro to me, because I don't know all of you. Most of you I do, but not all of you. And so I'm Anna, obviously. I'm from Denmark, but I've lived in the US since I was 13, so it's been a while. And my title here at Main Street, which I made up myself, so it doesn't really mean that much, but my title here at Main Street is that I'm the Director of Family, Connections, and Community Events. And basically all that means is that I really love people, and my job here is to make sure that all the people that come into these doors that have been here for 1 hour or 1 week or 1 year or 1 decade, all the people that are around us in the community, that they can get connected to our Main Street family. That's my job. And but I don't just spend all my time here, though for some of you it might seem that way. I do have a job. I work at Manchester Township High School in the special education department. I'm a paraprofessional in the autistic classroom, and I absolutely love my job. I love working with the kids. They are unique and different and challenging and funny, and I love being with my coworkers. And so when I'm not here, I'm usually there, or sleeping, but I don't get that much of that. So, but if you don't know me, that's just a little bit about me. And if you haven't figured it out already, but I'm sure you all have, was the theme of the service so far, we are learning about being a fisher of men. This whole month we're trying to learn about what does it mean to fish for men. And the reason we're learning about this is that we're in a season of, as a church, learning about absolute discipleship. What does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus? Well, a disciple of Jesus is a follower of Jesus. And I was researching this week about, well, what's a disciple? How do I prep this sermon? And I found this really spot-on definition that I really liked, which said, in biblical times when Jesus was living, a disciple was a learner and a student, but not a student like we think today, you go to college, you go to school, you study, you come home. It wasn't like that. So the definition I found said that the point of being a disciple is that this person, the disciple, would become a living copy of the master. So not just like understand some of the things he taught or pass the test that he gave, but become exactly like the master, like a living copy of him. And so for those of us who say we consider ourselves Christians and followers of Jesus, this then means that we are supposed to be moving towards becoming living copies of Jesus, which is kind of a big deal. That's like a big commitment if that's what we're trusting God to do in our lives. But so in order to figure out, well, how do I become a copy of Jesus, we got to figure out, well, what are the things that Jesus did and how can we learn to do them too? And the main thing that Jesus did with every single person that he met, every place that he went to, everything that he said was that he was intentional about fishing for men. And when he first called his first followers, what he said to them was, "Come follow me and I will make you fishers of men." And so clearly this is a theme, this is a trend, this is really important to Jesus, and that's why we're trying to learn how to do it too. And we're all trying to learn how to do it together. And so I personally have always known that I've wanted to be a fisher of men because I'm here today because someone fished for me. I became a Christian in high school because my best friend started fishing for me. She invited me to youth group, I came, I kind of liked it, wasn't really sure. She invited me again, so I kept coming. There were some things I liked about it. You know, I liked the people. Hopefully you guys like the people here. I think I love you guys. You're a very friendly, family, open group, welcoming group. So I liked the people in youth group. They had free food. I really liked the free food. We played games. They were fun. And I think I invited my crush to come with me one time. It was like, you know, hey, come hang out with me in youth group. So there are lots of reasons for me to go to youth group. So things I liked about it, but also Carrie kept inviting me. She was intentional about fishing for me. And if she hadn't been, then I probably would never have come back. So after about a year of going to youth group on and off, one night there was a speaker there. I was away for the weekend with the youth group, and the speaker said, if anyone wants their life to change, if you believe that you need forgiveness, then you can pray, you can ask Jesus to forgive you, you can devote your life to him, and your life will be changed. And I just knew in that moment, I need this, I want this is the next step in my life. And so it only happened because Carrie was fishing for me. Now, fast forward 10 years, which was about 3 years ago, I had obviously already, like I said, committed myself to Jesus, and I knew a lot about God because I'm a pretty disciplined person, and so that I decide that I want to do something, I do it, and I decided that I wanted to know about God, and so I studied God a lot, and I knew a lot about God, and I wrote papers, and I passed tests, and I took interviews, and so I can tell you all kinds of things about the Bible. But I came to realize that there's a big difference between knowing about God and knowing God. And I didn't know God in a relational way very well at all. But then something happened. My life fell apart. This was 3 years ago. I was engaged to be married, and I found out that my fiance was cheating on me. And I was broken and shocked and humiliated and in pain and paralyzed, and I didn't know what to do, and all the plans that I thought that I had and all the things I thought I was going to do now were no longer happening, obviously. And so something had to change. And I moved from where I was in New York, and I came down here to the Jersey Shore. And I met a group of people, many of whom are here today, who went fishing for me. So they saw that, yeah, this girl may think she's all that, and she may think that she knows a lot about God, but she doesn't really know God, and they loved me enough to not let me stay there. You know, they could have just been like, oh, you know, check, she accepted Jesus 10 years ago, and like, she's good, let's move on. But instead, they looked at me, they saw me for who I was, and they decided to fish for me and to be intentional with me. And they showed me incredible generosity, the type of generosity that only comes from trusting God and from loving people the way that God loves people. And that was bait for me as a fish because I had never seen anything like it before. And they invited me to their families. They let me live with them and eat their meals with them and hold their babies and watch their kids. They would even like leave and go places. Like, to other states while I watched their kids, which was a big deal to me because they trusted me and they invited me into their family. And my family lives in Denmark on a different continent, and so I don't have a lot of family apart from you guys here. So that was really important bait for me too back then. It really drew me into the family of God, and I was hooked. And my life started to change because of how this family went fishing for me. And so I can't imagine where I would be if Carrie hadn't fished for me, if you guys hadn't fished for me. And so happily, thankfully, because God is good, Carrie did fish for me and you guys did fish for me, and here I am today. And it's because they were doing what Jesus asked his followers to do, and they were doing what Jesus did. And so I want to take a look at just one instance of how Jesus did this, because we're supposed to be becoming living copies of him, right? And so let's look at how he did it. And like I said, Jesus fished for men everywhere that he did, so there's over 100 examples of how Jesus did this in the Gospels. But I want to look at just one, because it shows how you can go from making a connection with one person that can spread to exponentially to a multitude of people. So if you have a Bible, please turn to John chapter 4. I think it's going to be up there. And so if you don't have a Bible, you can look up on the screen. So I just want to read the story piece by piece and go through some of the key things that Jesus did to fish for this woman that he met. So I'm going to start at the beginning with verse 1. When the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, though Jesus himself did not baptize but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again to Galilee. But he needed to go through Samaria. So he came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat by the well, and it was about the 6th hour. So let's stop there. It says, Jesus being wearied from his journey, or depending on what translation you have, Jesus was tired. He sat down because he was really tired. And actually, the story could have ended right there, because what we're about to read never would have happened if Jesus had just given in to his tiredness. It says it was the 6th hour, which is around noontime. I've been to this area of the world. A few months ago, I went to Jordan, which is right next to Israel. It's like really hot out in the desert. The sun is beating down on you. So Jesus is tired, he's uncomfortable, and the story could have stopped there if he had decided to just leave it at that. But he didn't. He prayed, he asked God. He knew that being a fisher of men and being a master fisherman, it's not about feeling great all the time or only doing it when we feel like it. It's about knowing that the Spirit of God lives in us and gives us power to hear God and to speak his love to others. And so that's what Jesus did, instead of just letting his tiredness end a conversation that never would have started. So let's continue a few verses in verse 7. A woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Then the woman of Samaria said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." So, in case you don't know, there's a little bit of background to understand here, because this is a really big deal that Jesus was talking to this woman. First of all, because she is a Samaritan, and so Samaritans and Jews had a long line of hundreds of years of history of hating each other, because the Samaritans were a blended race of people that were there because Israel had been conquered by other peoples. It's kind of long and complex, but the moral of the story is that Samaritans and Jews hated each other. And actually, usually when people would travel in that area, if Jews had to go from Judea to Galilee, Samaria is right in the middle, so it makes sense to go through it, but they would go around because they were like, listen, we hate the Samaritans, they're no good to us, we don't even want to be near them, we want to have nothing to do with them. But Jesus decided to go through Samaria, and he decided to stop and talk with this woman. And then what's even more interesting about this whole thing is that this was a woman in a society where it wasn't really normal for a man to talk to a woman who was by herself. Like, it wasn't culturally appropriate. It's still not culturally appropriate if you're in the Middle East to, as a woman, talk to a man that you don't know. But what's more is that this woman was here at the well in the heat of the day, in the middle of the day, And that's not the normal time to go to the well. So think about it. If you have to go get all your water for the day in like a giant jug, I'm not going to do Pastor Bob like held this thing on his head for the first service to show how big the jug would be that she'd be carrying. Just picture it, guys. All your water for the day. If you had to get that and do such a hard job, you would do it early in the morning before it got hot, or late in the day after it cooled down. But here it is, the hottest part of the day, and the reason she chose the hottest part of the day is that she didn't want to be with anyone because she was embarrassed, and because nobody wanted to be with her because they knew what kind of a woman that she was, and they knew that she had a horrible reputation, they knew that she was doing things that she wasn't supposed to be doing, and so she was avoiding them and they were avoiding her. And really, for Jesus being who he was, which was this master fisherman and he was becoming a famous preacher. That wasn't his goal, but he was becoming it. He should not be talking to this woman, because if this got out and people found out about it, they were going to be shocked. They were going to be disapproving. This is the kind of thing that would be on the 10 o'clock news. Jesus speaking with Samaritan woman. Like, nobody ever followed him ever again. It really, truly was a scandal for him to stop and talk with this woman.
I am a woman of no distinction, of little importance. I am a woman with no reputation save that which is bad. You whisper as I pass by and cast judgmental glances, but you don't take the time to really look at me or even get to know me. Because to be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known, and otherwise, what's the point of doing either one of them in the first place? I want to be known. I want someone to look at my face and not just see 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, and 2 ears, but to see all that I am and could be. All my hopes, loves, and fears. That's too much to hope for, to wish for, to pray for. So I don't. Not anymore. Now I keep to myself, and by that I mean the pain that keeps me in my own private jail, the pain that brought me here at midday to this well. Now to ask for a drink is no big request, but to ask it of me, a woman unclean, ashamed, used, and abused, an outcast, a failure, a disappointment, a sinner. No drink passing from these hands to your lips could ever be refreshing, only condemning, as I'm sure you condemn me now.
So this is the woman. And all the things that she just said is what Jesus would have known, and what anyone passing by at that moment would have known and would have thought, would have decided, would have judged. But despite all this, Jesus talked with her because she was there. God brought her to him, and Jesus knew and understood that everyone needs God. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter what you do, where you've been, everybody needs God. And so when God puts someone in front of Jesus or in front of me or in front of you, it's because there's something that needs to happen. It's because they need God. It's because they need a touch, they need a prayer, they need a conversation, they need something. And so Jesus saw the woman and he spoke with her. And before we look at the conversation, I want to just point out how awesome Jesus was at having this conversation. He really is a master fisherman, because he knew how to, he didn't walk up to her and say, "You're a sinner, you're going to hell, turn or burn, believe in me." I don't think anything good would have happened if he had done that. She would have been like, "Who are you? What's wrong with you? Leave me alone." Instead, Jesus sat down, saw that she had a water jug. He felt thirsty, so he said, "Hey, can I have some water?" Natural, right? So what was there is what was happening. He made natural conversation. And so sometimes for us, we're a little bit weird or awkward, and it's a little bit difficult for us to make natural conversation, especially when we're meeting someone new. And so I just want to show us here, because Jesus is going to do this, a tool that we as a church use to kind of remember how to have conversations with the people that God puts in front of us. And so it's called Force, aka how to not be weird, okay? This is how you can not be weird when you meet somebody. So there's 2 things that Force tells us. One is it reminds us of our natural realms of relationship, the people that are in our life, the people that God puts in front of us. So that's our family, our neighbors, our work, our school, the places we go to have fun, our hobbies. R can also stand for rescue. So think about this. For me, the things that I've gone through in my life, been betrayed, been cheated on, deeply, deeply hurt, God brings people into my life who have experienced the same thing. Women whose husbands have cheated on them, people who are betrayed and don't know what to do with the fact that, yeah, the Bible says God is good, but I'm not experiencing it right now. Well, that's what I went through. And so God brings those people into my life so that I can say, hey, I know exactly what you're going through, and this is what God showed me about the truth about himself. So that's rescue. Think about the people, the things that you've gone through, the things that you've struggled with. Doesn't God bring those same type of situations into your life for you to connect with them? So the S then is spiritual. It stands for the fact, and we're going to see Jesus do this in a minute, that when we're having a natural conversation with people, we're not supposed to just be blabbing and talking. We're supposed to be listening to the Spirit of God and to be praying and to be asking God, God, what do you want to say to this person? At what point do you want to bring something more than just football, something more than just the weather, something more than just surfing into this conversation? So we pray, we engage God, we say, is there a point in this conversation where you want to switch from the natural to the spiritual? So let's look at what Jesus did. We are in verse 10. Jesus answered and said to her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. And the woman said to him, sir, you've nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where are you going to get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as well as his sons and his livestock? Jesus answered and said to her, whoever drinks of this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water, springing up into everlasting life. The woman said to him, sir, give me this water, that I may not thirst, nor come here to draw. So, what's happening is that Jesus is using the natural. They're at a well, he's thirsty, she has water, to engage in a conversation with the woman, and he's showing her that there's something more to it. He's talking about not just regular water, but living water, and he's wanting her to understand that there's something here that she needs more than what she has. But we're getting to this point where, he says, I have this water, and then in verse 15 she says, sir, give me this water that I may not thirst nor come here to draw. So Jesus is realizing, okay, she doesn't get that it's spiritual yet. She still literally thinks that she's going to have a drink of water and never feel thirsty again physically. So Jesus is like, all right, this is not a switch moment. He's praying, he's engaging God, he's listening to the woman. He's realizing this is not a switch moment. Let's keep on engaging in conversation. Let's draw it deeper. Let's see how I can maybe tell this woman something more about God. So he continues. Verse 16, Jesus said to her, go call your husband and come here. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you have well said, I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. In that you spoke truly. The woman said to him, sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where you ought to worship. Jesus said to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you don't know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. The woman said to him, I know that Messiah is coming, who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. So Jesus he's now continuing the conversation, and is going from water, and she's now bringing in something a little more spiritual, something a little bit deeper. She's saying, hey, you know these things about me. I can tell that there's something, you're a prophet. And she starts talking about spiritual things. She said, hey, I'm not really sure. I heard we're supposed to worship here. You say we're supposed to worship here. What's it all about? Jesus talks about it a little bit, and then she says, I know that Messiah is coming. So now at this point, as Jesus is engaging with God, listening to the Spirit, he's realizing, okay, she is ready. She knows that Messiah is coming. She's looking for him. She's listening for him. And so then it continues right here. This is the switch spiritual moment. Jesus said to her in verse 26, I who speak to you am he. So now, this is where things start to get even more exciting. So at this point, his disciples come. So we're at verse 27. His disciples came, and they marveled that he talked with a woman, yet no one said, what do you seek? Or why are you talking with her? Like I said, they were shocked. Why the heck is he talking to this woman? They wouldn't have done it. They didn't know how to fish for men yet. The woman then left her water pot, went her way into the city, and said to the men, come see a man who told me all the things I ever did. Could this be the Christ? Then they went out of the city and came to him. And so we can see what's happening to the woman. She's believed Jesus. She's super excited. She's now fishing for men. She's going back to her village, back to the people that in her natural self, she doesn't want to talk to them. She knows they judge her. She knows they hate her. She knows they don't want to be with her. And yet she's willing to, and it says, Pastor Bob pointed this out earlier, she even left her water pot. So that all that work that she was doing, lugging it back and forth, she's going to have to come back and do that later because she forgot all about it. She ran to tell their village. And she goes beyond her feeling of being uncomfortable, beyond her feeling of embarrassment, and says, you need to know this thing. Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be it? Could this be the Messiah? I don't care what you think of me. You have to know. You have to come see. And they come. She's fishing for men. Meanwhile, the disciples are still super confused. This happens a lot in the Bible, which makes me feel better about the fact that I'm often super confused. They say to him, hey, we got you the food that we went to get. And Jesus says, I'm not hungry. And the disciples are like, why are you not hungry? Like, where did you get food from? Did you bring snacks that we didn't know about? Like, why are you not hungry? They're super confused. But Jesus says to him in verse 32, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. And they keep saying, well, like, what food? Where'd you get it from? Can we have some? What's going on? So Jesus is like, oh my gosh, let me explain it deeper. Jesus said to them, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. So he continues to teach them. Do you not say there are still 4 months and then comes the harvest? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes, look at the fields, for they are already white with harvest. And he who reaps receives wages and gathers food for eternal life, that both he who sows and he who reaps may rejoice together. For in this the saying is true, one sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap that for which you have not labored. Others have labored, and you have entered into the labors. So there's 2 really important things that Jesus says here. One is, the food he's talking about obviously is not physical food that he's eating with his mouth. He's saying that as he is engaging God, as he is in mission, as he is fishing for this woman, he's no longer tired, he's no longer hot and sweaty, he's no longer thinking about all those things because he is with God and the Spirit is working in him and he is excited to be on mission and he's seeing a life changing. And that's what it's supposed to be like. When we are learning how to fish for men, it's exciting, it's an adventure, it's a life that we get to live with God and walk with God and listen to him and talk with him and do, like, this is so exciting. And so it's supposed to be something that brings us joy and brings us to life and not something that we're like, oh great, now I have to go talk to my laborer. And so the second part of this, we know this is really important because of all the things that Jesus said to his disciples that day. He chose to say what I just read about the harvest. He says to them, open up your eyes. There's more to see here than what you're seeing. You're just seeing a woman, you're just seeing a well, you're just seeing a scandalous situation, but I don't see that. I see more, and you should too, because you know me. And so he's saying to his disciples, and he's saying to us, there are people all around us who need to know about him. There are people that God's placed in our lives for us to tell them about him. And we need to ask God to give us his eyes so that we can do what Jesus did and fish for men and see miracles happen and see lives change the way that this woman's life was changed. So, verse 39, the result of this conversation that Jesus has had with the woman. Many of the Samaritans of that city believed in him because of the word of the woman who testified, he told me all that I ever did. So when the Samaritans had come to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days. and many more believed of his own word, because of his own word. And then they said to the woman, "Now we believe, not because of what you said, for we ourselves have heard him, and we know that this is indeed the Christ, the Savior of the world." And so, what's so incredible about this whole situation, even more so than the fact that we see Jesus being a master fisherman and using force and switching to the spiritual and engaging this woman, is that one encounter with one woman changed an entire region.
I am a woman of no distinction, of little importance. I am a woman of no reputation save that which is bad. You whisper as I pass by and cast judgmental glances, but you don't take the time to really look at me or even get to know me. Because to be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known. And otherwise, what's the point of doing either one of them in the first place? I want to be known. I want someone to look at my face and not just see 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, and 2 ears, but to see all that I am and could be. All my hopes, loves, and fears. But that's too much to hope for, to wish for, to pray for, so I don't. Not anymore. Now I keep to myself, and by that I mean the pain that keeps me in my own private jail, the pain that brought me here at midday to this well. Now to ask for a drink is no big request, but to ask it of me, a woman unclean, ashamed, used and abused, an outcast, a failure, a disappointment, a sinner. No drink passing from these hands to your lips could ever be refreshing, only condemning, as I'm sure you condemn me now. But you don't. You're a man of no distinction, though of the utmost importance. A man with little reputation, at least so far. You whisper and tell me to my face what all those glances have been about, but you take the time to really look at me. But you don't need to get to know me. Because to be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known, and you know me. You actually know me. All of me and everything about me. Every thought inside and hair on my head, every hurt stored up, every hope, every dread, all my past and my future, all I am and could be. You tell me everything. You tell me about me. And those words which spoken by another would bring hate and condemnation, coming from you brings love, grace, mercy, hope, and salvation. I've heard it said of one to come who could save a wretch like me. And here in my presence you say, I am he. To be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known. And I just met you, but I love you. And I don't know you, but I want to get to you. Let me run back to town. This is too much for just me. There are others, brothers, sisters, lovers, haters, the good and the bad, sinners and saints, who should hear what you told me, who should see what you showed me, who should taste what you gave me, who should feel how you forgave me. Because to be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known. And they all need this too. We all do. Need it for our own.
We all need this for our own. That's what the woman knew. That's why she went and told her entire town. And that wasn't just true back then with the woman at the well and Jesus. It's true, no less true today. It's true now, it's true in your life, it's true in my life. And so the question then is, like, how do we do this? How do we fish for men? And I have to tell you that even though I'm up here and I have a title and I preach sermons and all that jazz, I've been a Christian for 15 years, and I only just now am starting to learn how to fish for men. And like I said, it was only 3 years ago that I really started knowing God instead of just knowing stuff about him. And then even more so, it was only 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I've been living here for a little bit, and I was telling the story about my life that I'm the only Christian in my family, but I've never really boldly shared how God's changed my life with my parents. I invited them to church and hoped that other people would tell them, but I never did it. And so, as I was talking about this, of course the question came back to me, what? Like, you say you want to be a fisher of men, you say that you want to change the world, you say that you want to go all over the world and tell people about Jesus, and you can't tell your parents about Jesus that know you and that you've lived with your whole life. And they were right. And as I was thinking about how right they were, I realized that for a few years I had been really frustrated with God because I was praying, God, save my family, send someone to my family, please, like send someone to share the gospel with my family. What's wrong with you, God? Why are you not sending anyone? Don't you love them? And as I'm sitting there thinking about this, I'm realizing God did send someone. He sent me. Like, hello, he answered the question the day that I was born. He said, the reason you are put in this family is so that you can tell them, I'm going to change your life, and you get to be part of changing theirs. You get to tell them the truth, tell them how I saved you, tell them how I changed your life, tell them how I gave you joy and peace and love and family. And so I did. So finally, this was only 2 years ago, after being a Christian for almost 15 years, that I boldly told my parents, this is what happened to me. You know I went away, you know I came back different, but this is how and why, and this is what God means to me now, and this is why I love him so much, and this is how he's changed my life, and this is how he's changing it every day. So it was really only since that day that I even started sharing my faith boldly. That was just 2 years ago. And I still wasn't doing it on a regular basis. It wasn't until the beginning of this year, 6 to 8 months ago, that I realized that, yeah, you know, I say I'm wanting to fish for men, I say that I love God and I love people, but I'm not really showing it because I'm not telling everyone around me about God. I'm not being intentional with everyone around me. I say I love God, but apparently not enough to obey him in fishing for men every day. And I say I love people, but apparently not enough to tell them about the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me so they can have it too. And so at that point at the beginning of this year, I started being intentional, not just every once in a while, but more regularly. When I went to work, when I went here, when I went to Wawa, wherever I went, I started asking God, okay, what do you want to do here? But I still let myself be held back, and sometimes I think, oh, I'm afraid, oh, I'm uncomfortable, oh, I'm tired, I'm hot, I don't feel like it today. And so it still was an on and off thing, and so that was 6 months ago. So it's really not until what Pastor Bob was talking about earlier, 2 weeks ago, that finally I was like, this is stupid, this is crazy, like enough is enough. I really say that I want to be a fisher of men. God says that he wants me to be a fisher of men. It's never going to change if I don't do something about it. If I don't put a stake in the ground and say enough is enough, it's going to change now. So that's what I did 2 weeks ago. Today is day 14. Tomorrow is the beginning of week 3. And I challenged myself to fish for men every day, and to go looking for a miracle every day, and to see God at work in my life and in the lives of the people around me every day. And I can't even tell you how amazing it's been. I have done all kinds of crazy things, mostly they're small things, things that make sense, things that you can do. I've walked down the street to my neighbors, across the street to my neighbors, around the corner to my neighbors, and talked with them, and invited them here, and gotten to know them better. Found out that the one neighbor across the street is having a baby in a few months, and I didn't even know. I've talked with the guys down the street who changed my oil, told them about this place. I've talked with the lady in the grocery store. All these is the place to be. There's a lady there. I'm getting to know her because I want to invite her here. I've talked with the couple walking their dog down the street. I just have been looking at, instead of being in my own little bubble, saying, all right, God, the person in front of me, I'm going to talk with them. I'm going to have a conversation with them. I'm going to listen to you and see if you want to say something to them. I've called and texted tons of people that God's brought to my mind that I haven't seen or that I haven't heard from, and said, hey, like, I missed you. How are you doing? These are small things, but it's amazing the way that God is using them to reveal himself to me, to others. So, all that to say is, I'm really excited, in case you couldn't tell. I'm a very excitable person, so that helps too. But I'm using force, and I'm making the most of every moment, and I'm praying, and I'm talking to God, and I'm going out every day expecting a miracle. And what's more important and more exciting than me doing this is that you could be doing this too. And if you consider yourself a follower of Jesus, you should be, because that's what he calls us to do. And I may know through various networks of people, a few hundred people, but you guys know thousands of people that I'm never going to meet. We don't have the same we don't live in the same neighborhoods, we don't work in the same places, we don't go to the same Wawas, we don't have the same families. There's thousands of people here through you guys that will never hear about Jesus from me, and that will never hear about Jesus if you don't decide to tell them. And so, it says in the Bible that God puts each one of us in our homes and our families and our workplaces for a reason, very intentionally. And the reason is so that you can fish for them, so that you can tell them about God. All these people around you, they need God just as much as you do, as you did, as you still do, as I do. And He is, God's heard the prayers of those people, or the prayers of their families who's praying for them, or your prayers, you may be praying for them. In the same way that I was praying for my family and God said, hello, you're it. That's what He's saying to you. You are the answer to someone's prayers, but you have to take a step forward and be intentional and go fishing. And so I want to give you guys a challenge. I want to give you the exact same challenge that I gave to myself starting 2 weeks ago. That for the next week, starting right now, starting today, every day, go fishing. Go looking for a miracle, listen to God, be intentional, and then come back here next Sunday and tell us how it went. Tell me how it went, tell each other how it went. Tell us what God did, because God's going to do something every single day, I promise you.
Amen.